Food prices should be dropping dramatically every single year. Why are they going up? Because government, you don't believe me you don't believe me when I say that?
Pierre dropping some truth bombs today. Welcome back to Moose and Loose. My name's David. Today we've got a woke reporter that tries a gotcha question on Pierre Poilievre, tries to pin him in the corner with us. Pierre is not having it. Absolutely embarrasses the guy. Fact checks him on the spot as Pierre does, quick on his feet. Pierre also getting asked about land rights and First Nations trying to take back land in British Columbia. Let's jump into this. With Mark Carney's budget looming here coming October 4th, he's getting hammered hard on his budget. Food prices are out of control. Conservatives are doubling down on this.
I recently spoke with a young father in Spencerville, and he has a trade, he has a job, and he has a young family, but he still has to count on a productive deer hunt this fall in order to provide a high-protein diet for his family. Now, why? The inflationary policies of this Liberal Prime Minister continue to drive the prices of food at the grocery store higher and higher. Why can't this Prime Minister see that his policies are making things worse for Canadians who are just trying to get by?
Madam Speaker, I have some good news for my colleagues. I respect him a lot, but I don't think he's been seeing the evolution of the Canadian economy, Madam Chair. Madam Speaker, I have some good news for
What, the evolution of it right into the toilet? Our economy is crumbling.
Remember, the Canadian economy is growing, Madam Speaker. I think he should be thanking the plan of this government, Madam Speaker, to make sure that we can grow the economy. We invest in the future and on the budget in November 4th. I know the Conservatives are waiting for November 4th.
Can we...
This guy is unbelievable. He's so out to lunch. Jumping over to Pierre Poilievre's press conference today. He is absolutely dropping truth bombs here. He destroys a woke reporter. But first off, listen to how he starts this out.
After his disastrous stint as the governor of that bank, and now he's bringing the same disastrous policies here. Don't take my word for it. Recently, Mr. Carney appointed a parliamentary budget officer, and that budget officer is commenting on Carney's spending and his deficits and said they are, quote, very alarming, stupefying, shocking, unsustainable. If you don't change, this is done. Something is going to break. While Canada hasn't gone over the precipice, he says, and I'm quoting, it's looking over the cliff. After 10 years of Liberals and after 6 months of Mark Carney worsening the problem. Under his leadership, he has added another $100 billion of spending measures above and beyond what was there under Justin Trudeau. In other words, the deficit is now 2/3 higher than the one that Trudeau left behind for this year. He has added well over $100 billion of deficits for the forthcoming 5 years. In fact, the 5-year horizon for deficits has now doubled under Carney versus what it was under Trudeau. So a more conservative-looking haircut, suit, and resume has not resulted in more conservative spending.
I just knew Pierre was going to bring out all those quotes from the parliamentary budget officer, the interim one. He just speaks his truth. So the Liberals are going to want to get rid of that guy. Now check this out. He brings up a bunch of stories here of Canadians struggling, and this is heartbreaking.
It was all an illusion. In fact, Mr. Carney costs more than Mr. Trudeau. And who's paying the price? Because every dollar the Carney Liberals spend comes out of the pockets of real people, like Joanne, who wrote my office, 59 years old. She's applied for 1,200 jobs over the past 17 months. Her 37-year-old son is out of work and had to move back home. Rent is...
Did you hear that? 1,200 jobs she's applied for in a year and a half and can't get a job. 1,200 jobs. That's unreal.
Is 2 months behind. She's facing homelessness. Her credit card is maxed out. She eats all of her meals from a food bank. Taylor, her rent has doubled under the Liberals. And now her rent alone costs her whole paycheck. It's gone, just with rent. Nothing left for food. So she skips lunch. She's injured, but she works 6 days a week. She can't afford it to lose any income, but she can't afford a home, can't afford to save any money. Her parents bought their house for $200,000 in 2010. Can you imagine that? You can't buy a parking space for $200,000 under the Liberals. Now that house will go for $1.5 million. In other words, the daughter cannot afford to even dream of owning the house that the parents owned under the Conservative government. Charity from Northern Ontario, where housing and the cost of living used to be cheap. Now this 41-year-old single mother with 3 boys uses a food bank every week, lives with her parents and grandparents because rent is too high, no retirement savings, doesn't know what she's going to do when she eventually does get too old to work. Her oldest son has applied for many jobs, but none get back to her, as Mark Carney allows multinational corporations to give her son's jobs away to low-wage temporary foreign workers. And he says that the corporate lobbyists don't want him to reverse that policy. But sadly, our young people can't work. Canadian jobs should go to Canadian workers.
Canadians need to come first, for once here. This is a real state of Canada. We've got mothers going to food banks, eating all of their meals, 1 out of 4 meals, some of their meals every month. Canadians don't have enough money. And what is Carney and the Liberals doing? Sending more of our money offshore, Gaza, Africa, South America, the Caribbean. There's a lot of money. If you saw that video, a lot of money going down to the Caribbean. And in that video, I only showed Jamaica. There's a lot of money going down there. Why is that? Because a lot of money goes to disappear there. No paper trail. That's why you got all these companies that register their businesses in Bermuda, the Cayman Islands, low taxes, tax havens. That's why we see a lot of foreign spending going down there. You get a government in power that's on the same track. No paper trail. Where'd the money go? Meanwhile, inflation rises, food prices rise, and Canadians suffer. Our population has to wake up and get rid of the Liberals.
Crystal, a 45-year-old single mother of 3, has been coming here to Fire of God Food Bank since 2019, finds grocery prices increasingly unaffordable, and she's desperate. She has no idea what she's going to do. You know, when on Sundays they open here, what is it, at noon or 11? 12:30, and the people arrive. What time do they start lining? 7 a.m. they start lining up here for 12:30 food. And then on the weekday?
We open at 4:30.
And?
11 a.m.
11 a.m. people line up for a 4:30 visit to the food bank.
So basically speaking, people are lining up for 5 hours to get free food. That's how bad things are. Just think, if they had a job and went and worked for 5 hours, they'd make more than well enough money for the food, but there are no jobs. That's the point.
Is the hell that Mark Carney and the Liberals have brought to our streets. Mark Carney, and he will say, don't blame me. He was busy traveling the world when all this happened. Well, I'm not going to hold Mark Carney to my standard. I'm going to hold him to his own. He promised in the election he'd bring more affordable food. He said that Canadians should judge him by their experience at the grocery store. That's a quote. Since that time, beef is up 33%, soup 26%, grapes 24%, coffee 22%, beef stewing cuts 22%. And it's not a global issue. It's not a foreign issue. It's a Mark Carney Liberal issue. Food prices are rising 48% faster in Canada than they are in the United States of America. And you can't blame tariffs, because American tariffs do not apply on food consumed here in Canada. So no more excuses, no more distractions. It's time for Mark Carney to take responsibility for the food price hell that he is causing in this country. In fact, food price inflation is twice the Bank of Canada's target. 1 in 10 Torontonians is eating at a food bank. Greater Montreal has 500,000 visits to food banks every single month. Food Banks Canada reports that 25% of Canadians are living in food insecurity after a decade of Liberals. Worsening under Carney. It used to be a year ago, folks were spending $16,000 on food every year. That's up $800 to almost 17 grand.
This madness will just continue to get worse unless we get rid of these guys. But Carney has to have an election here at some point. Who's going to support his budget? Even if he gets through this, he's not going to last. This is a minority government. We're going to have an election in the next year or so. But we need to get people educated on what's going on, because when you're watching CBC or CTV, you're not going to get the real picture. You're getting the Liberal lens of Canada, which paints Pierre as the bad guy and Mark Carney as the good guy. Next up, we got a reporter from the Globe and Mail. This woke attempt at trying to pin down Pierre Poilievre and make him look bad for the carbon tax being removed. Mark Carney reduced it and saying that food prices didn't come down. They did come down. I've been tracking them myself. Multiple items came down in price, about 25-30%. And then Mark Carney, more inflationary spending, and the prices just keep going back up. They needed to cut the carbon tax, cut out all the extra spending, reduce the deficit, and the prices will come down. But instead, they're spending more, so we didn't really see much of a dip.
Good morning. It's Campbell Clark from the Globe and Mail. I'd like to ask you about inflation and food inflation.
Yes.
Inflation's running at 1.9% as of August. Food inflation at 3.4%.
Right.
You also ran on a platform with substantial deficits. So could you tell me what do you think the rate of inflation would be if you were elected with those substantial deficits? And also, you were saying last year that the biggest cause of food inflation was the fuel charge, the consumer carbon tax. That's gone now. So has that lowered food inflation?
Okay, with two parts. First of all, I ran on cutting the deficit, and we had costed reductions. We had very specific reductions in the size of the federal bureaucracy. We proposed to cut the consultants by $10 billion and to cut foreign aid in half. I could go on. So we proposed to cut the Liberal deficit. It would bring it down. When you bring deficits down, you bring inflation down. Inflation is caused by one thing, and only one thing, and that's government. Government spending and government taxes drive up the cost of food. Food prices should be plummeting, to be frank, because farmers produce far more food on far less land, with far less fertilizer, far less labor, far less water than ever before. So it would be based on the market. Food prices should be dropping dramatically every single year. Why are they going up? Because government. Well, you don't believe me you don't believe me when I say that?
I don't believe that's an explanation for food prices. There's banana.
No, you're right. And what increases the cost? The taxes. So they didn't get rid of the carbon tax. I said I would get rid of the entire carbon tax for everyone, for everything for real. The Liberals have an industrial carbon tax, which the food professor says applies on the food chain. It taxes farm equipment and fertilizer, so to tax food. They've got the fuel standard tax, which is gradually rising up to the same level as the fuel charge. Then they've got the food packaging tax, which is a plastic tax that is going to increase the cost of food because plastic is the best way to preserve food. And then, of course, there's the inflation tax. When you print money, you get inflation. And with respect, I know when I said this back in 2021, you all told me it was wrong, and of course, it was the right thing. Maybe my friend here, you didn't say that. I wasn't accusing you of that. But everyone said it was wrong, but it is a scientific economic fact. When you print money, you get inflation. Just like Mark Carney caused the worst inflation of all of the neighboring countries in the UK when he was the Bank of England governor, just like when he advised Justin Trudeau to print money in Canada, we got terrible food inflation. So you need to cut the deficit, eliminate all the food taxes, and then allow our farmers to bring nutritious, delicious, affordable food to your plate and mine, and everybody's.
The carbon tax, lower food inflation.
I think when the Liberals take their hand out of one of your pockets and then put their hands in three of your other pockets, you're going to end up paying more.
Thank you. Next question.
This is amazing. This exchange here, Pierre allows him to keep clapping back with these little heckle comments. He just keeps slapping them down one after the other. The guy, it's hard to hear him, but he kept on making comments like 4 times. I mean, if you listen to the start of his question, he said, you ran on a substantial deficit, trying to paint him into the corner with the Liberals, when really Pierre had to reduce the deficit in pieces to get rid of it. From the start, there's a very woke question, and Pierre recognized that right away. It's just pathetic. We've got people like this in journalism pushing nonsense propaganda, but Pierre's fast on his feet. Absolutely decimated this guy. I mean, the news doesn't lie. Look what we've got all over the place. As GM job cuts loom in Oshawa, one man is preparing to leave Ontario City he loves. Some 2,000 workers will be laid off when GM cuts a shift at its Oshawa plant in January. People are losing their jobs, cost of food is rising, and we have woke reporters trying to push nonsense at these press conferences. It's deplorable.
Good morning, Rachel Aiello, CTV News. Just to go back to the Algoma Steel announcement, the federal government is framing this as a reason why the upcoming deficit is going to be so large, because they say they are using this money to support Canadian industries. Can you just clarify, do you support this example of spending? And if not, what would you do differently to support those jobs?
Thank you. So we have to look at the details because there's the press release and then there's the reality. And for example, Liberals created a $70 billion housing bureaucracy they said would make homes affordable. And what did it do? It doubled housing costs. So if you had asked 10 years ago how wonderful this new program would be, then maybe people would have agreed, but the result was actually to increase housing costs. We need to look at what they've actually proposed and what they're actually doing. As for this business of investing, okay, this is nothing new. I encourage you all to go look back at the video reel of the Liberal ministers and of Justin Trudeau's 2015 election campaign. He claimed that if he ran deficits, it would be an investment that would grow the economy. And what happened over those 10 Liberal years? The per capita GDP in Canada was the worst of any G7 country. Then, after COVID was over, they began spending on deficit dollars on things unrelated to COVID, and they said it was an investment. What happened? Our GDP per capita grew at the lowest rate in the G7, and we had the worst inflation in 40 years. So now Mark Carney is repeating the same Liberal talking points of the last 10 years, claiming that when he borrows and spends, it is an investment. He will get exactly the same results that the Liberals have gotten over the decade that has gone behind it. It is the definition of insanity, is doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result.
We're not going to join the finance minister in patting himself on the back while millions of Canadians are lined up at food banks. Let's talk about the economy. GDP shrank in Q2. The finance minister should know that, but we haven't seen a budget from him, but we've seen all of the warning signals. And so has the parliamentary budget officer, who said that it's very alarming what's happening and that something is going to break. But it's already broken for Canadians. They can't afford to feed themselves, feed their families. They're worried about the cold coming and not being able to heat their homes. It's the policies of this Liberal Prime Minister that are vaporizing any supposed savings that they're going to have from tax cuts. Why won't they?
Honourable Minister of Finance.
Madam Speaker, I know the Conservative are eager to see the budget and hopefully vote for it because, Madam Speaker, indeed, we need to change course in this country. We need to spend less so we can invest more, Madam Speaker. That's what we're proposing to Canadian, generational investment in our future, Madam Speaker.
This is so unbelievable. This is nonsense. We know this is a huge deficit. As Pierre just said, 2015, Trudeau did the same thing. Spend more, generational investment, build Canada's economy. It didn't work. It's all big grift.
Frankly, the only difference between Mark Carney's deficit spending and Justin Trudeau's is that Carney's is much higher and much more irresponsible, and it will have even more destructive effects. Deficit spending weighs down the economy, crowds out investment, drives up the cost of living, and makes us poorer. What we need is to unlock, you asked my approach, we need to unlock the free enterprise system where businesses have low taxes, fast permits, access to markets so that they can build. We should have the fastest building permits anywhere in the world so that money-making projects that create wealth for our people can be unleashed.
This is a great example. Bring up Trudeau, 2015, nothing has happened. I mean, same thing with the housing accelerator. They were caught out on that. Trudeau's housing accelerator didn't create any homes. A bunch of $1 billion went to people. Did it build millions of homes? No. And once again, Carney's doing the same thing, but putting a different name on it. Instead of housing accelerator, it's Build Canada Homes. Same crap, different flies. And finally, we got Pierre Poilievre being asked about the Supreme Court decision in British Columbia with the land being seized back, essentially. This response is perfect.
Oh, well, we'll let her have it. Right. Sure.
Thank you so much. Sarah Ritchie with the Canadian Press.
Thank
you wrote
you,
a letter recently to the Justice Minister about the BC Supreme Court decision in the Cowichan case. What exactly do you think that the court got wrong that the government ought to argue?
Well, the court got property rights wrong. The court found in its ruling that the fee simple property rights that have existed for hundreds of years and are the foundation of our very economy should be overturned. That would devastate our entire economy. It is already causing investment to flee our country. People are not going to build factories, open up jobs, start businesses, or even buy homes if they think that their land could be confiscated and given to someone else. So we oppose this ruling, and we call on the federal government to make legal arguments at the appeal level to overturn it. We hope that the case is heard quickly so that we can put this matter to rest. We as Conservatives stand for property rights. We want all of the property owners in British Columbia and across Canada to know that we will protect your home. Your home belongs to you, and we will fight against any legal attempts to take it away from you. Thank you.
That's just it. I've been saying this so many times. We can't have it where 180 years later, First Nations wants all the land back. Then you have companies who won't want to invest in Canada. Canadians won't want to buy houses in Canada. This is obviously in British Columbia right now. And if it starts spreading across the country, this will be an economic disaster for the country. And then there will be no more handouts because there'll be no more money being generated in this country. First Nations won't get their money anymore. This is a slippery slope that must be ended immediately. If we see another and another and another example of this happening, you will quickly see the fall of British Columbia.